Hello, everyone. My name is Elisa Ewan, and I am the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations here at Teachers College. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for the Alumni Career Development Webinar Series featuring alumna Francine Fabricant. The webinar series covers a range of career topics and includes speakers from a variety of backgrounds. The series is co-sponsored by the TC Office of Career Education and Professional Development, as well as the Office of Alumni Relations. You can find videos of past webinars on our website at www.tc.edu/alumni/career-webinars. Today, Francine will present Career Transitions, Making a Change That Works for You. With an extraordinary passion for helping people make their careers work for them, Francine Fabricant helps people rethink their career opportunities and build careers that are personally meaningful and rewarding. She is the lead author of the textbook, Creating Career Success, which was published in 2014, and is a frequent speaker on career topics, addressing real-world concerns, and offering practical ideas and solutions. She has served as a career counselor at Columbia University as well as the Fashion Institute of Technology, and is a current lecturer at Hofstra University Continuing Education. She received a BA cum laude from Barnard College, Columbia University, as well as an MA in Organizational Psychology and an MED in Psychological Counseling, both from Teachers College. Her community-based workshops have been profiled by the New York Times. The presentation will utilize some handouts, which you can download from the handouts pane in the control panel. If you have any issues with your audio, please feel free to chat me directly in the chat box. And without further ado, here's Francine.
Thank you, Elisa, and thank you to the entire TC Alumni Relations team. Thank you also to all the members of the TC community that are joining us today. Having worked as a career counselor and career educator for many years in university settings, private practice, and also through community outreach, I was very honored to be invited to speak with you. And I'm also very excited to share some of the resources that I use to help my clients and students navigate their own career transitions. But before I begin, I want to let you know a little about what's been on my mind as a career counselor. We've seen massive shifts in careers over the last few years, with new careers popping up and others disappearing, and new skills like machine learning, natural language processing, all becoming new additions to our vocabulary. New career theory has emerged, and it's leading us to rethink how to use the tools and resources, as well as what new tools and resources we might want to use for career development, but also how to plan, and even if it's possible to plan. And yes, I do think it's possible, as long as we're flexible, and we'll talk about that today. So I'm hoping that you'll take away from today some strategies that you can use to explore career options, consider how they fit your personal goals or objectives, and feel more prepared to take action. Today's agenda is we're going to start with preparing for your transition, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what is the new normal, what do careers look like today. And then I'll get into some of the new theories and a framework that we can use. Then we're going to talk about how to apply these to generate and consider ideas. We'll also look at creating a flexible plan, and then we can have a discussion about resources, and also I can get a chance to hear your questions. So before we get into the theory or the frameworks, I'd like to learn a little about you. So while you're getting settled, please take out your phones, open any browser, and type in polev.com. And my passcode here is Francine, Francine Fabr 485, as you can see on the screen. And here's our first question. And what we're going to do is put together a word cloud. So as you start to put in your ideas, the words that come to mind when you start thinking about making a career transition, they're going to come in and they're going to fill the screen. So scary, journey, daunting. So we're feeling some concerns about what's coming. Okay, see another scary. So as you can see, when the words are repeated, they get a little larger. Unknown, unclear. Okay. Okay, so I'm hoping that today, as I'm seeing these words, these are really consistent with what's going on in today's career environment. And fuzzy, actually, fuzzy goals, or one of the ideas about how to, look at our future, and greener grass. Okay, chapter. Lost. We're going to actually look specifically today at how to gain some clarity. And I see possibilities. And actually, I was going to say gain clarity by creating possibilities and creating opportunity. Okay, great. I think that this is a wonderful opportunity to see what's going on in people's minds as they're thinking about careers, optimism, so purpose, and messy. I'd like everyone to, kind of look at this and think, where do you sit in terms of these? Do they all apply to you? Do some? And let's go forward. And I want to hear a little more about reinvention. Great. We're definitely going to be exploring how that fits into. Okay, now let's look at this next question. What would you like to learn today? So if you want to just type in some things specific that you're hoping that I cover and you're hoping that we can touch on, that way I can come back to that and have some ideas about what's going on for you as you're sitting here participating. Okay, what else am I qualified for outside of my industry? Okay, encore careers and avoiding ageism. How to draft a cover letter for a career transition. Okay. Okay, not to be scared. How to move forward when you're unclear, and how to position myself. Okay. Okay, great, in a new industry. And for the person who wrote in about how to position themselves for a new industry, if you feel like typing in another question that you're learning, is this an industry that you have thought of, or a different industry that you may not have identified yet, if you get a chance? I know it's hard with the pull everything. And how to compete with competitors in the job market with huge social media footprints. Okay. So we're going to talk a little about that and a little bit about applicant tracking software. And that's part of that process, how to apply to jobs efficiently when applying different roles at once. Okay, we're going to talk about the lack of clarity around how to market yourself in a lot of different directions, but we're not going to get too into the details of creating the resume itself or the marketing materials, but we'll talk a little bit about looking at different directions and how to stay confident. Okay. I'm hoping I can give some how to address income and salary and health benefits. Okay, so let me keep some of these things in mind and see how I can possibly integrate some of these specifics as we're moving forward. And I think a nice place for us to start is to kind of, step back and get on the same page around what is going on. What is the new normal in career development? And maybe this can address some of the thoughts that came up in the word cloud around lost and unclear, and even a little bit of scary, and hopefully bring us all a little closer to the optimism around how we're going to manage this. So just to kind of take us back and take us to where a lot of the career tools were oriented, and so the questions that came in about how do I create a resume from more than, or not resume specifically, but how do I create a job search strategy that's going to address multiple directions at once. So this wasn't an issue a little while ago. People had one career for a lifetime, and alongside with that, we had slow technological change and we needed fewer new career skills. Well, for most of you sitting there looking at this, we know this is not the case any longer. It's changed on almost every single front. And now reinvention was one of the words that you just listed. We have nonlinear career paths, lifelong learning is a mandate, and now we're looking at much more job insecurity and multiple jobs and careers. So despite the changes, a lot of us still think about careers as, having a match. One of the theories that a lot of the career resources are built on was really around this idea that birds of a feather flock together. In fact, as you see in this quote, this idea of matching was one of the most, really aligned ideas around career development. If we could only figure out what interests us and then figure out the career fields where people who like those same things and had the same values and skills and use them, where they were all working, we could, really find a fit. But actually, that's no longer, the case, because even in any specific environment, there's now more than one direction that we can go, and typically jobs encompass a lot of different ranges of skills. And you might be sitting next to someone who has an entirely different career field than you, but you're working in the same office, maybe in an open space. So this idea of matching is no longer as applicable. And another piece of this that I think is important to note is this idea about being undecided, that the idea that we know our future and that we can predict our future is also a little outdated, as we have multiple jobs and careers throughout our lifetime. So now the idea of thinking of open-mindedness is a very different, it's a very different way to look at it, but it's also a career skill. And that's pretty aligned with some of the new theory. It actually comes, this quote was from John Crumboldt, who created the happenstance learning theory. So if there isn't one right career for me and I'm still undecided about what to do next, how can I move forward? So this is kind of the process from going from order, we can figure out what's out there that's perfect for me, to the messy world and how inconsistent it is, and then looking at strategies of probability and possibility and how that can be incorporated into an approach to really developing a career that's going to be more personally satisfying and also fits with how careers are changing. Okay, so now this is a screen, as you can see, with a lot of words on it, but what I want to do here is kind of bring you into what I do as a career counselor and kind of working off of the theory. And this chart right here is really comes from a small piece of the chaos theory of careers. The chaos theory of careers was created by Bright and Pryor to explain how careers develop in the real world. In today's world, where it's hard to make predictions, follow probable outcomes because of the complexity disorder and the messiness of unexpected events. Within that, the CTC also examines how to manage this complex world. So how do we find what's meaningful to us? How do we pursue it? How do we pursue it even when things around us change and they influence us? And in turn, out of that influence, our ideas change and what we want to do changes. So how do we do that in that context? Well, the CTC assumes that as our options change and we want to change, we probably need a range of skills to manage that. We need skills that are consistent with the old career tools and the way that we built careers when we had linear paths. And we also need a whole new set of skills. And as you can see in the fourth quadrant here, this leads to a combination of both emergent and convergence knowledge. So the convergent knowledge is a lot of the career information that, the career knowledge that you're probably well aware of, the idea of learning about your own interests, skills, and abilities. Interest assessments fit in here, as well as, when we think about our abilities, we think of the, when you're younger and you took an SAT test, economic trends, labor market information, any of the resources that really play into what we can learn about the world of work as well as ourselves. That's all convergent knowledge. Emergent knowledge is the knowledge of this new environment that we're in, being aware of the disorder, of the change, of chance events, unexpected events, and looking for patterns and themes in this. And this is really also the place where our own purpose and passion comes in, and figuring out what that is and how it changes over time. So for one instance, I work a lot with women who are returning to the workforce, who might have taken time off, or women who want to make a career change after having a family, and or also people who are making a career change because they're caring for family members, could be parents or other relatives. So when family comes in, that's somehow, it doesn't come up predictably, it comes up unpredictably. even with children, sometimes it seems like we can keep going in our current work, but then suddenly the work doesn't necessarily work for us. There are questions that we have about how we want to reshape it. And all of these are examples of the chance and the change, and looking for patterns and themes in terms of what we want to change, what we don't want to change, what we can't avoid changing. This is where we focus on possible outcomes. So it's this intersection between probable outcomes and possible outcomes. And the way we get there is through reflection and learning to adapt and combining objective and subjective data and living with uncertainty, but embracing it, and also creating opportunities. So I'm going to touch on these concepts of convergent and emergent knowledge as we go through the activity. So a lot of the things that I talk about in the next few slides around how we're going to get to this place where you're able to use the tools to make a transition are going to touch on, so where are we building convergent knowledge and emergent knowledge so that it's effective in the new environment, rather than merely to get us to a matching place that's idealistic and no longer applicable. So the model that I want to discuss today is a wonderful model that is really, as you can see, depicted as a Mobius strip. So this is designed to help you imagine how you'll build these emergent and convergent skills, and also how you'll be able to apply this to your own life. So I'll present activities and strategies through this lens, and it was designed to be aligned with the CTC. With the chaos theory of careers. The model, as you can see, is the Mobius strip. There's no start and there's no end, and you can skip from phase to phase in any order you'd like. So you can start with explore and then go to start and adapt and back to start and over to prepare. And you can do this, without any interruption. And actually, they're depicted as phases, not steps. So they tend to merge into each other. And I'll talk a little later about the details of each phase. We don't need to get into that now. But in your handouts, in the first sheet, you'll see there's actually a handout that has a grid with each of these different words listed on it. And the idea is that what I'd like to suggest is that as I'm talking about activities, if you want to jot down your thoughts and reactions within that grid in these different sections, aligned with explore or adapt or start or prepare, the grid will help you, to have some thoughts that you can look at later when we talk about the flexible plan. And there's some other prompts throughout the workshop to help you, come up with ideas for the flexible plan as well. Okay, so let's apply this and explore how to use this in practice in your life. Okay, so explore. One traditional approach to exploration was to take a career assessment. And it's a question that I still get asked, and actually I do a lot of career assessment work. And the question really, to hit it head on, there is no test, and to dispel any myths, there is no test that will tell you exactly what career is right for you. Explore relates to the concept of complexity. So the idea that in this phase, you're learning how to understand how complex factors come together. And this helps you make meaning of the world as well as your role in it. So around career inventory, so yes, they can help potentially. What they can do is they can show you how your interests match with career fields, as I talked before about matching, but they can't tell you which one is right for you. They're not predictive. They instead can give you ideas. They can give you ideas that help you explore further. They can give you ideas that generate questions. They can give you ideas that you want to reject. You can say, I know I'm good at that, and I know that I could do that, and it doesn't interest me. And so that's a way of ruling things out. Career inventories also only look at a certain number of career fields. So those are limited as well. And now, as we see with all, with so much change happening and so many new career fields emerging, that can give us insight. If I like this, what else is like that? So those are some places that we can take that information and take it a step further by looking at what's evolving in particular career fields or in industries, or even within different jobs, because those are changing so much as well. But career inventories are not the only tool that's available for you to explore, obviously. So some other suggestions are lifelines, mind maps, journaling, and One of my favorites is collage. So for a visual learner, if you'd like to just start cutting out pictures, and even if you want to get together magazines or just printing out pictures from the internet and creating a collage of your career inspiration, these are great ways to explore. The purpose of this is really to help you identify your skills and interests, and also recall important events that impact you and your career, and to be flexible about what options might be interesting to explore, even if you're not yet ready to pursue them. So this is really more about learning about yourself and about the world of work. And as I mentioned before, that definitely aligns with some of the convergent skills, but the activities will also align with emergent skills, where you'll be looking for patterns, looking for themes, and generating new ideas. So people, as I said, ask me about career assessment a lot, and it is something that I use. And what I wanted to do today is provide you with some resources. So, one of the things about career assessment is that when you look online, it can be challenging to find assessment tools that are research-based and that are recommended by someone in the field, but also can be utilized independently without a career counselor interpretation. So these are all tools that have that capacity. So for a personality assessment, the MBTI is a very well-known tool, and they now have the MBTI Complete. And that resource and all of these resources are on the handouts, so with links, so you can just click through and see these. To assess interests, the SDS and also the Strong, and in the case of the Strong, it's the iStart Strong is an independent tool that you can use, and that looks at your interests and compares you with people in career fields who have similar interests. Around skills and values, I like the tools that are created by Dick Nodell over at careerplanner.com. And there's a lot of other tools on these sites. I'm just recommending a few that I think are useful. Luck readiness is a new concept, and it's specifically out of the chaos theory of careers. And that was created by Jim Bright, and that's a really great resource if you want to kind of play around with how ready am I for luck, and this is an opportunity for you to kind of look at what are the criteria that demonstrate my readiness for luck, and then it's a chance to take a look more deeply at that and consider if any of those things are areas where you might want to explore more deeply to grow and to become more ready, or to say, I can take a risk here, and why or why not. So again, that's a very emergent knowledge oriented inventory. And then also under career research, I have some links on the resources for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, for the Occupational Outlook Handbook, and also for O.NET Online for my next move. And these are resources where you can find more information about career fields. So specifically around the top resource, the one from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Occupational Outlook Handbook, this is an incredible resource, really aligned with the convergent knowledge, where you're going to find out about career information, but it lists skills, it lists educational paths, it lists salaries. And what I like to do is combine it with some of the other tools to say, okay, if I'm looking at interests and I find that these, there are career fields that that I seem to be interested in based on, the information that I've gathered from the interest assessments, then I can look up the career fields here at the BLS site and see what do they tell me, and then building that toward the emergent skill. Well, what are all these careers? Do they have things in common? Are there skills that seem to be appearing in a lot of the different career fields that interest me? Are there people that I'd like to work more with or less with that I feel like I can connect with? And those are some of the emergent skills that come from looking at patterns as you're going through that research. Another activity that's great for exploration and a personal favorite is going to a bookstore or library and looking at biographies. We're all motivated in different ways. So as you look through biographies, asking yourself questions about how the person's life inspires you is really going to help you to generate those ideas of patterns and themes. So you might ask, was it fun? Was it exciting? Was it dramatic? Was it meaningful? Did it have an impact on others? So as you can see, there's a real range of questions that you could be asking, and they're generally going to reflect what was important to you, and that'll lead you to be asking certain kinds of questions. At TC, a lot of us are really interested in making a difference in the world, and despite that common theme, we all find different ways to do it. And that's going to also, be something that you might notice as you're looking through the biographies. And taking note of those themes is an emergent skill that's really going to help you to, see possibilities when they come up. And that's kind of what you're looking to do here. So as you're going through and learning more about the complexity of careers with this explore piece, you're looking also, how am I going to generate opportunities out of that? So some pieces to also add for that is taking a look at the steps that people take. And then also, which steps would you like, and which steps maybe are not as attractive to you. And the more you explore, you begin to see there's not going to be one right or best next step, just as there's not one right or best next career. But that also you can't, nor would you even want to repeat exactly what others are doing. I really like this quote because it seems to bring that to light. I mean, we can all admire Picasso, but we're not going to paint like Picasso. And using more red, and as with this quote, is not going to help us to paint more like Picasso. But looking at art and saying, okay, I'm really inspired by this. What inspired me? And I want to create my own art that speaks to me and speaks to others and moves me in a way that and potentially moves others in a way that is meaningful to me. That's a question that's very different. The next phase is prepare, and prepare is aligned with the concept within the chaos theory of careers of chance. So luck is a funny thing. I actually often ask people to tell me to have fun when I go and do something that is risk taking, or I that I'm nervous about, and instead of saying good luck, or let's create some luck, I like to think of having fun. But the truth is that luck is a really big part of all of these ideas, and the reason why it's a big part is because the theorists are kind of looking at luck as being opportunities that you set the stage for. So what this what this idea is really based on is the concept that career development is really about, at this stage, with what's changed in the world, is about expected and unexpected events. So an example of this is if you identify an experience that you feel could help you create opportunities, like let's say either attending a conference or joining a club or volunteering or going to an interview. All of these things require you to get ready in advance, so you'll want to prepare. But the theory suggests also that preparing for luck is not just preparing in advance; it's also really observing well while you're there. So even in that circumstance, an interview is an experience that you're learning while you're there, while you're being interviewed. You're learning: do I find this interview interesting? Do I feel like I'm connecting with the interviewer? Am I able to get my questions asked? Do I feel like I'm comfortable in this environment, in this setting? And then you'll want to follow up. So the follow-up is often considered an afterthought, or a kind of, the ending. But actually, because this is a Mobius strip and all of the phases merge into each other, actually we can reframe the follow-up also as preparation for your next interaction. So let's use the example of meeting someone at a conference. The follow-up might be telling them how they influenced you, or what they said or what they shared that really you found interesting, and explaining why you wanted to keep in touch with them, and why you're following up. But by also adding to that what you'll do next with the information that they shared, and also how you'll follow up to let them know how that went, you're setting the stage for the next time you interact with them. So actually you're also preparing. So you're kind of ending the experience with the opportunity to prepare for the next time. Another way to prepare, to set the stage, for this great transition that you're making, is to start looking at your resume and revising your resume and your other job search materials for the job search. So because the job search has changed so dramatically, there's always room here. And one of the things that people often tell me is that they're really hesitant to rewrite their resume or prepare for a job search until they know exactly what they want to do, mostly because they're intimidated by this process of applicant tracking software. And this screen is an example of one of the products that's used to share information on candidates for employers. So when people tell me they're hesitant to rewrite their resumes or to start that job search material updating process, they tell me that because they feel that they don't have the information to go forward. And so through this CTC lens and this new framework that we've been talking about, we're thinking of your goals as always changing, even if you have an idea exactly what you want to do now, and you'll probably get more information as you go. So this is where creating more than one resume can be helpful if you feel that there are more than one paths that you might be exploring. But also, this is a place where going forward, even without all the information, is really aligned with the new theory. So that can be challenging, but it's part of like remaining flexible and letting that be okay, letting it be okay that your resume is probably going to transition a little further. So for instance, if you were to meet someone through networking and you had the opportunity to ask them for some feedback on your resume, it'd be great if you had already started this process of integrating some of these new ideas, even though you've not yet committed to that direction, because that way getting feedback on that information would help you know, is this am I conveying my job search, am I conveying my skills and assets in the same way that employers are going to be reading them and hearing them? Another way to get started on this, instead of just talking to people, is to use a tool that helps you understand what applicant tracking software is actually looking at, and what your resume, how closely your resume and your job search materials match. So I know there was a question earlier on about creating a cover letter for a transition. So I know I don't have an example on this screen, but you can certainly get in touch with me afterward for something like that. And I can share some resources. But specifically for the resume, if you're not familiar with what applicant tracking software is, that's the software that employers use to cull data from resumes to see how closely it matches the skills and the experience that they're looking for. The great news for you is that their job listings include all of that information. So the job listings I like to call your cheat sheet to creating a resume that's going to match what they're looking for. And a site like JobScan, and the resources also on the handouts, is a site where you can actually upload your resume and upload a job listing and then see how closely they match. Networking is another really great way for you to prepare, kind of fitting in this model of preparing for chance to occur. Chance that's going to be really beneficial to you in your job search, so or in just even exploring your transition. So the questions that I often hear around networking kind of fall into two camps. How can I expand my network, and how can I increase the benefits of networking? And to address this, what I think is helpful is to look at some of the strategies around how networking is even framed, and then use that to build into how you can increase the benefits by taking advantage of those concepts. So strong and weak ties is not a new concept, but it's the idea that we have strong ties, people that we know really well, and these are often our family members, our close friends, the people that we go to on a regular basis. And then we have weak ties, people that we don't know as well, and this could be former professors, it could be friends of friends, it could be people in our, people that we have work relationships with, but not our closest friends. And we spend a lot more time really building our strong ties than we do our weak ties. But often our weak ties are the ties that have social resources that we're not aware of. So I'll give you an example. If you're looking for a job and you tell all of your close friends, they're going to tell you right away. They probably already knew you were looking for a job or that you were looking to make a transition, but your weak ties probably didn't know. They're less aware because you're less in touch with them. And often we're also, more reserved when getting in touch with them because we haven't spoken in a while, or we're not sure, how to approach it with them. So what I think can be really useful, this is a place where some of the online tools are really helpful. So specifically LinkedIn. LinkedIn, if you're using LinkedIn actively, you probably have some of your strong ties on LinkedIn. Or I even find with some of my with some of my students and clients that they don't include their strong ties on LinkedIn. They're just connecting with them all the time. So, you can certainly add them too. But also they have a lot of weak ties, often that they're not in touch with frequently. So even just looking through your list of connections on LinkedIn and seeing who's there is a great way to keep front of mind the people that you're not as close with. And then as you're reading articles or learning about different things and you're thinking about the industries that you're interested in, this is a chance for you to then get in touch with those people, maybe send them an article with a personal note about, what interested you or why you're reaching out. And that way you're sharing something that you think might be of interest to them. Another theory that I think is helpful is structural holes. And this concept is really that it's not enough just to have weak ties or even weak ties with social resources. Social resources referring to the knowledge that those connections may have about the field that you're interested in, or information that could help you, or even connections to other people. But structural holes suggest that we also want weak ties who are not connected to each other. Because perhaps if you're reaching out to weak ties and they all have the same information, then you're getting a lot of information that could be really biased toward what people in in one region of the country are thinking about a certain career field, or in one particular organization, or even they may not know about job openings in another organization or another company. So having connections that are not connected to each other is also important. And that's something else that you can look at, and sometimes getting involved in groups that you may not be involved in yet, like a LinkedIn group or a professional association, is a way to start to build connections that are not connected to your other connections. Okay, the next phase is START, and this is really about taking action, and the chaos theory of careers concept that this relates to is change. And change happens when we take action. So I put up this question, how can I tell if what I'm doing is working? Because I think that that's a big question that people have when they start this process. They're exploring a lot. They may not have an idea yet about what they want to pursue, or they think they do, and they've reworked their resume, but then the resume, isn't leading to the outcomes that they want. So I'm going to step back and tell you a little story about a job seeker. She was preparing to make a transition from her old field. She had reworked her resume. Her criteria for the new field was that it capitalized on some of the skills that she enjoyed using most, and that it was an expanding field. And she absolutely had found an area that fit those criteria, and many more. And her resume was really well aligned for this. And the evidence that we have that her resume was working is that she was getting a ton of interviews. And somehow the interviews were not leading to offers. And she worked on her interview skills a lot, and she felt her interviewing skills were there, but still there was a connection that was missing. Because she didn't get an offer yet, and she had a little extra time on her hands, she started volunteering. The volunteer work led her to feel really fulfilled and really connected, and she started making really wonderful connections with the people in her volunteer work. And they started suggesting that she apply to positions within that industry, which was very different than the area that she had been applying to. And she felt her resume wasn't ready. They were asking her for a resume. Her resume was geared toward the other field. They said they don't care. They just want to see it. They want to know what her experience is. They know from working with her that they can write that they can, start to think about, how she's a fit. And in doing that, she was able to get some feedback and able to rewrite her resume very quickly. And even the areas where she didn't have the skills yet, she was able to talk about that in an interview, how she'd build those skills. And ultimately, she made a transition, and it was very successful. So that's an example of how just getting started and just throwing yourself in the game sometimes gives you information and data that you wouldn't have otherwise. So before we reflect on these activities, I'd love to hear from you again. Let's choose an action that could help you start your transition. Here are some prompts. You can choose other if you have something in mind. And then what we're going to do is a little bit later, we're going to use these as tools for the flexible plan activity. Okay, attend an event, connect with someone online or in person. Okay, great. Join a LinkedIn group. Okay. Okay, terrific. And start a job search. Okay, I see a little of everything here. Okay, great. And okay, moving around, attending an event seems to be popular, and that's a great way to get started and start meeting people and also start learning. So keep that in mind. We're going to come back to it. Adapt is the final phase. And when I say final, I do not mean final in terms of it's the final phase that we're speaking about, but they all move around, so you can go to them at any time. But adapt is really connected to the concept of construction, that we're making meaning, we're constructing careers. They're not happening to us. This is an intentional experience that, that you get to take hold of. So around this, how do I learn to be more flexible to expand my options? So flexibility in terms of the CTC is not about compromise. It's really about expanding our options, including more. So one activity to cultivate this skill is to actually write the story of your career, and then write a new ending, or write a new beginning, or write a new chapter. The idea that we're writing something that really builds on what we've done and is creative and shows flexibility and moves us in another direction, but it's your story and you write how it happens. I love this activity because it's very creative, but it's different than journal writing because we're actually writing a story and we're imagining what we want in our future. Excuse me. So now I'd like to just start to move us to the idea of creating a flexible plan. And this is, definitely fits within this concept of adapting and construction. And in the packet that in the handouts, there's actually 2 sheets that align with this activity. There's the part 1 is really about the convergence skills, listing objectives and goals, what steps you'll take, creating a timeline, and how you'll know when you've completed the steps, and then kind of moving into the emergent skills with a reflection piece. What did you learn? And to list your expected and unexpected outcomes. And then part 2 of this activity is where you're really focused on emergent skills. And those emergent skills are looking at your objectives and goals, as well as your expected and unexpected outcomes, and seeing if you recognize any themes and or patterns. And the next piece of that is, what do these themes and patterns tell you about yourself? Do they suggest any new career ideas, job options, people to meet, steps to take, and what new objectives or goals emerge based on this insight? So if you want to take a moment to jot down some thoughts there. And you'll see that as you're jotting down thoughts, what you're really doing is you're going through these steps that are outlined on this slide around setting goals and taking action, learning through experience, reflecting, recognizing themes and patterns, and creating opportunities. So I want to thank you, for going through these steps and share just a few resources. So this is an image of the book that I worked on, but also 2 other books that I think are really fantastic. And a lot of the material here is drawn from them: The Chaos Theory of Careers, and also Luck is No Accident. And Luck is No Accident is great because it has a lot of stories that all relate to how people created luck in their lives. And please, now is a great opportunity, for me to hear from you, and if you'd like to share any questions or concerns or any other ideas.
So yeah, we're open for Q&A now. Go ahead if you have questions to submit your questions in the questions pane. So Francine, we already have one.
Okay,
so the
great.
question is, I'm looking to re-enter the workforce after almost 11 years of being out. I stopped working to raise a family, and now I'm ready to go back to work in the field of HR. I loved my job, and I know I performed very well at it, but my self-esteem and confidence are really low now because I've been out for so long. How do I get employers to notice me? The last date on my resume was in 2009.
Okay. Well, first of all, even though your last date of employment was 2009, I bet you've been active and doing things since. And if they don't relate to the work that you're interested in doing, it's still okay to put volunteer work or other experiences on your resume just to show what you've been doing. Also, employers are much more used to working around gaps in employment. It's no longer the obstacle that it used to be. I think um, one of the people really who's been spearheading this is I'm going to say her name. I'm hoping that I get her name correct, Carol Fishman Cohn. But if you look at I'll actually, if it's okay, is it possible, Elisa, for me to share resources after?
Yeah, so if you want to send me those resources, I can
Okay.
make sure that's getting shared out to the group.
Okay, great. But I Relaunch is her site, and she also has a really terrific TED Talk. And it talks about, kind of all these issues touching on the confidence and the self-esteem and, this transition from being at home with a family to going back to work. And the reason why I like that resource is because it creates community. So one of the things that I think is also helpful is, the way that this framework is designed. The idea is that you're taking action all the time, and the action will add new questions. So for instance, excuse me, you might find that your confidence is strong when you talk about certain things and maybe not some of the newer developments in the field. So that may lead you, or you may go to a conference or an event and you may think, okay, you know what, I didn't know about, certain developments in the HR field. And that may lead you to watch a few webinars from people within that community, or learn more about what the current trends are. So by taking action, you'll get the cues of what kind of things are making you, feel either more confident or less confident. And then you can test that again by, re-entering and, taking a new action. So I think those are the ways that, we're really building confidence aligned with this theory. Did that answer your question? She can write in if she has a further question.
Yeah. If you have a follow-up question to that, please feel free to submit it. We'll move on to the next one. So the next question is, I've been on the job search / transition for about a year now. I've taken different actions. I've networked. I've went to events. I've applied to a bunch of jobs, and I haven't landed any interviews or opportunities yet. What could I do differently, or what else should I do?
Okay. So this is often a question, and I think that people are often feeling like part of this is just how impersonal the job search has become, since there's, we're talking about, the headlines in the papers read the robots reading our resumes, the robots reading your resumes. So this idea that the applicant tracking software is in the way. If you're not getting interviews, usually it's in the tools that you're creating. So there's actually a website that I love to recommend called blueskyresumes.com, and that site has some great samples. It's on the handouts as well, and it shows how people have transformed their resumes to really show evidence of the accomplishments, and then also taking your resume and uploading it to a site like JobScan that I talked about a little bit ago, and looking at how it aligns. So this will give you data and information on whether your resume is actually meeting the applicant tracking software terminology. So that's the first step. Let's just get your resume to meet the criteria. But then if you find that your resume is working, and and you are getting interviews, or if you're not, that's a different question. But if you're getting interviews after that, might be a situation like the one that I talked about before, where there's something in the fit, and you can learn that by, again, taking action with some other environments. So it might be that there's something very similar to the field that you're exploring that fits you in a different way that could also be a possibility. And so part of this theory is, really accepting that there's no right career. So it's okay to explore a lot of different directions, and something is going to be a fit. And I see this again and again where, where people have been searching for a long time, and then they find that something that they didn't expect kind of seems to be the place where their interests and the opportunities that exist in the field are kind of aligned with what they want to do at that moment. So those are some ideas. There are other ways to explore it, and I hope that I've touched on a few. Some of the resources that I shared, these books, as well as the online resources that I shared in the links, those also might be helpful.
Great. So the next question is, resumes look so drastically different today than 10 years ago. I've recently updated mine, but I'm not convinced that it's in line with the current trends. Do you have any recommendations for format, content, design, or web pages, or just any resources you recommend to reference more than the ones that I've seen online?
Okay, great. Well, like I said, I really like blueskyresumes.com. I think that's a great resource. They have very nicely designed samples there. And I think those are good resources. But one of the things that they do is the resumes are designed specifically for the type of opportunities, and they really highlight the evidence that people have in their current work around what they've done, as well as the quantifiable accomplishments that they've had. So that's a new trend. That's not as new as I think the most recent trend, which has still been out for a little while now, which is a header, which includes a few words that seem to highlight what the person's main strengths are. So I like that trend. And I've seen a lot of more non-conventional resumes, but I think employers, are still using conventional resumes. It works well with the applicant tracking software, so that's still helpful. But then another piece of this is to develop a strong online presence. So LinkedIn is a place where you can expand a little bit on what you've got on your resume. So the resume is one piece. Hopefully those tools will help you, but then the LinkedIn is where you can expand, and also you can say less about certain things. And then there you can give examples, and also by having the opportunity to connect with people who can vouch, for your experience and write a recommendation for you on LinkedIn is also helpful, because employers will Google you, and LinkedIn, because of their, their high SEO, will often come up first. So
Great.
I'm looking
So
nice.
the next question,
Mhm.
I am a student with little experience in the workforce. Whenever I have an interview, interviewers always ask me what my career plan is, but I don't really know how to answer that question because, like you said, the unexpected situations always emerge. I just don't know how to start my own plan. Can you recommend anything I should start with?
Okay, I love this question. It really aligns with the quote that I put up earlier from John Crumboltz, which was around reframing undecided as open-minded. So, but even when employers hear open-minded, they want some criteria. So what does that mean? So you will do anything? No, I mean, we have, so this is where we can go to that idea of convergent and emergent skills. So the emergent skills, the emergent knowledge is your awareness that you're open-minded, that things may change, and that you're listening as you're having a conversation and a dialogue, so things may come up. But the convergent piece is, do I know my interests, my skills, and my values and the things that are important to me? Do I know these things well enough that I can see when careers are aligned with them? So maybe I can talk it more in terms of the strengths that I want to apply. So if I think about my own experience, early in my career, I knew I liked to write. I knew I liked to speak to people. I knew that I liked to learn about current events, and this led me in my first career to public relations, which was the job that I started in. And it certainly aligned with all those things, but I felt that, I also liked helping people. And so on the weekends, as a volunteer, I was working to help build leadership skills as a volunteer with an organization. So then I realized I could combine these things a little bit more. And so in terms of not having experience, in school, you actually have tremendous experience, and employers are really eager to hear about that. And that's why you're getting interviews. And also when you network with people, they want to learn, what are you learning? So one of the things that I encourage people to do on their resumes to bring those student skills up to the forefront, because often if you've had part-time jobs or experiences that aren't really related to your career goals, sometimes your coursework is the most relevant experience you have. I actually encourage people to list that as project experience on the resume, and to list the course that they took and the project that they did, whether it was a team project, what their role in it was, what they accomplished, what the outcomes did they present to the class. Sometimes those school experiences really look like the type of experience you'd have on the job. And often they actually are school experiences that integrate real interaction with employers and with people in industry. And so those are experiences that you'll really want to talk about on an interview, and they start to highlight your skills and your strengths.
Okay, so the next question, is it a good idea to look up people from the organization and send them my resume directly after applying on the online application link?
So this is in some cases yes, in some cases no. And the reason why I say that is that so I always think it's great to connect with people in any way that is appropriate. But in some cases it's not necessarily the way that they expect to receive resumes, or they won't necessarily be able to do anything with the resume. So what I would suggest is, if you're first to find out what's industry standard, and the way that you do that is by talking to people in that industry. So this is where your alumni connections can come into play. Are there people within your field that you have maybe TC alum, or connecting with the alumni relations office? They have some resources to get in touch with alum that are in different fields. So that may be a place to find that out. Another and then to ask them specifically, do people in this field like hearing from others directly? So in some fields they absolutely do. And then what I would do is specifically acknowledge, I just said that I just sent my, I just applied to the blank 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 position, through the through the online site. However, I see that you're the supervisor, that you're, the manager in this department, and I also wanted to send you my resume directly. Thank you again. And, to really write a letter that kind of correlates to the other document that you submitted, so that they know that that channel is also being addressed. And, that way they're not sure, what do I do with this resume, but they can look at it also. And, like I said, checking with industry standards and checking with your network is a good way to proceed that decision-making process.
And just to follow up on that, if you are a TC graduate, you have access to TC Connect, which is our alumni directory and network. So it's a great way, if you're deciding to do a career transition, to see other TC alumni who are in that industry or in that field, and you can message them through the application to kind of go ahead and start that conversation and maybe schedule an informational interview. And that information will be sent out in the post-webinar email that you'll get tomorrow. So just keep an eye out on that. So I know we have a couple more questions, but I want to be mindful of everyone's time. I know Francine has her email address that she's happy to share with you. Please feel free to email her. But Francine, I just first want to tell you thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise with the TC community. A video of this presentation will be available on our website, which is www.tc.edu/alumni/career webinars. And it will also be linked to the email that we send out to everyone tomorrow. Please feel free to visit our website for more information about our monthly webinars and our upcoming events. We hope that you'll join us for our next webinar, which is Going Up, Perfecting Your Elevator Pitch for Networking and Career Success, on March 24th with alumna Nancy Leeton. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day.